Hey, what is going on, guys? Kirk here, and welcome back to the Geek Effect. In today's video, I'll be reviewing another action figure here on the channel, and this is one I am so excited about getting unboxed because I've wanted to see this particular suit of Spider-Man for quite some time. Now, this is the Symbiote Spider-Man that is a part of the retro or vintage wave of Spider-Man figures that has that Toy Biz inspired packaging, and this is a collection, for those of you guys who know me well enough from the videos that I posted on the channel, that I just, really care a lot about, and I love seeing them release more and more figures under this packaging, under this whole inspiration and everything like that. So I remember when I first got the retro Spider-Man figure, that classic suit, red and blue, and that was one of my favorite figures of last year. So when I remember picking it up and messing around with it, I'm just like, having the black suit to go side by side with this would be wonderful. Like, it would just be amazing to see them release that, and they finally did for this year, along with some other cool figures. One of them I picked up, which is the Shocker. So I'm looking forward to getting that unboxed too, and also picking up the rest of the figures from this new wave for 2022. With that being said, though, let's go ahead and take a look at the packaging and then get this guy unboxed. So as usual, we do get to see some more of the 90s style Toy Biz packaging for this figure, and as I've said time and time again in the past, it's one of my favorite types of packaging to see from Hasbro and Marvel Legends because it has an authentic feel to it, and it's basically a replica of the packaging from the 90s for Spider-Man the Animated Series. The only thing that's different about it is that it's upscaled to match the scale of the 6-inch figures from this collection. We'll see things like the Spider-Man logo at the top with Spider-Man perched on top, the 90s style Marvel Comics logo, the info card which just says Symbiote Suit and then says it in different languages, and we also have the artwork card for Symbiote Spider-Man with the text at the bottom of that. And I do want to give a bit of recognition because I don't think I've done so in the past, but I want to, give a bit of recognition to the guy that does the artwork for this collection, I believe, which is Harry Moore, and he goes by Harry Moore Design over on Instagram. So if you guys are not already following him, be sure to go ahead and do so because I believe he deserves more attention and appreciation for, the work that he does for this collection, especially coming from someone who appreciates this collection from Legends and Hasbro and everything like that. Flipping the box around, though, we will get to see some more artwork and then the info card, which gives a brief read-up on the figure, which just states, Spider-Man gets an all-new look when he finds a sleek black costume in a space shuttle wreck. Little does Spidey realize he's joined himself to the predatory alien symbiote, Venom. And then we also have the little blueprint sort of graphic that's inspired by the 90s as well, where you can see that you can swap out the hands. And one of the cool things about this figure is that instead of getting just one pair of hands as extra, like the retro Spider-Man figure for the classic suit did back in the day, we get 2 extra pairs of hands this time, so 3 pairs of hands total, which is exciting, and they actually include wall-crawling hands this time, which I'm very excited to get those unboxed and see how those are. And then we also have some more information on the other figures in this collection, so we will see things like Spider Armor Mark I, Marvel's Hammerhead, Hobgoblin, Ben Reilly Spider-Man, and Marvel's Shocker. And then we also have the, warning and stuff for the figure and everything like that. But let's go ahead and get this guy unboxed. So here we have Symbiote Spider-Man, or Black Suit Spidey, out of the box, and this guy is very impressive. I love the details on it, and I think that Hasbro and Marvel Legends did a great job with producing this figure. Like, despite it being a reuse of the body mold for the classic suit Spider-Man from this same wave where it's, red and blue, that iconic color, like, this is still a very impressive figure, despite it being a reuse of the body mold. And the only thing that I did notice, actually, that is updated here, of course, besides the inclusion of new hands and everything like that, would be the head sculpt. Like, this is actually a new head sculpt on this figure, and I love how this looks. It carries that very sleek and slender sort of facial features of the character and suit style of Symbiote Spider-Man. And even with, like, trying to pose him, I was trying to figure out, like, how should I pose him on camera when getting him out of the box and everything like that. It just kind of came to me as, like, leaned back, showing off the muscles and just, like, ready to attack. And this is what I came up with for the most part. And I think it looks cool. It definitely does show off that nice stature and everything of him. But let's go ahead and get a closer look at this guy. Here we are up close to the Symbiote Spider-Man, or Black Suit Spidey, if you will. And as I said earlier, I really love how this guy turned out. It's definitely going to be one of my favorites that I picked up this year, that I've unboxed. And I think it's safe to say is gonna go toe-to-toe with the red and blue suit that I picked up last year from Wave 1 for this collection of retro vintage figures for Spider-Man. Now, another thing I will say is that I think Hasbro and Marvel Legends have definitely achieved greatness when it comes to this figure because although it uses the, same body mold and everything from that red and blue suit from Wave 1, it still manages to stand out. And one of those things that makes it stand out is going to be the updated head sculpt for this guy. It does not use the same head sculpt from the classic red and blue suit. This one has a slimmer look to it, especially when you get that side profile. You'll see that there, and when you have it side by side, you'll definitely notice the difference in comparison to the classic red and blue suit and then Symbiote Spider-Man. The classic red and blue suit definitely does have a shorter head sculpt, and it seems wider in comparison to this one where it's slim at the front of, the face area and everything like that. The chin, everything just seems more defined and slim, which I do love because that matches the look and style of, Black Suit Spidey from the comics, from the animated cartoon, from, the 90s. Like, everything of that is here in this figure, and I do appreciate that. Another thing I will mention that's different about the head sculpt is going to be the eyes on this figure. Like, if you compare this to the eyes on the other Symbiote Spider-Man figures that we've seen from Legends, those have a much wider expression to them. They're bigger, and they kind of stand out more in comparison to this one. But I like this look more. I think it is a nice style to go with, and I'm glad that Hasbro and Marvel Legends wanted to use this style versus that style, because it also has that look from, the earlier appearances of this suit, like from the Secret Wars comic, where that makes an appearance, and some other earlier comics where this suit makes an appearance in them. And especially with the 90s animated series for Spider-Man, being someone who loves that show, it's nice to have that sort of style going on here where, I don't need the whole big Y expression to it. It's just a nice, simple look that just, at the same time, just looks awesome. So, yeah. Now, as I stated before, the body is definitely the same, but, the details that need to be there are there. So, the muscular details and everything with the neck, the pecs, the ab area, the rib area, all of that's there, and I do love those details because it just has that Spider-Man sort of feel to it, if that makes sense. Now, of course, the elephant in the room is always going to be the big white spider emblem on his suit, because that is one of the things that stands out, and I do love that. I mean, the paint does look pretty nice on it, and it looks pretty much the same as the one on the, retro card Venom from Hasbro PulseCon. Like, that one is nice on that figure, and so it pretty much matches the same thing. Of course, it's smaller because it is on a slimmer body in comparison to that one. Venom is much bulkier in comparison to Peter Parker, so there is that difference, but it turned out well, and you can see the same thing on the back of the torso as well. The only time it's going to look weird is when you have the arms arched in, more towards the pec area, so it's going to, misalign, and it's not going to be aligned with the part that's towards the mid-torso sort of area. But once you kind of, align it back, it looks good, and then the only time it's going to cut itself off is once you have the arms arched inward towards the back, and that's the only time it's going to look weird. But other than that, I think that the details for the spider logo did turn out great. And then you also have some more paint details on the hands when it comes to the, white rectangle on the gloves, both hands. And you'll also see that on the other accessories of hands that come with this figure. As for the legs, the muscular details, like I said, are there. So you'll see all that definition and everything in the thighs. You'll see it there on the calf of the figure. And even with the toes, it's the same shaping. So, like I said, everything on this guy is just fantastic. And with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the accessories that come with it. So upon taking your Symbiote Spider-Man out of the packaging, he does come with two fisted hands already on him, and I like the sculpting on them. Now, these are actually the same fisted hands that came with the red and blue suit from Wave 1, so there isn't much difference here when it comes to their shaping or anything like that. But of course, the main difference is the fact that they're molded in black, and then they also have the white rectangular pattern painted on them, which looks accurate to the symbiote suit that we see in the comics and everything like that. Now, for accessories, when you put this guy to the side, this is where things get a bit interesting, because we do, of course, see the return of the thwipping hands that we got with the red and blue suit from Wave 1. So these are the same shape, same sculpt, and they, of course, are molded in black and then have the white rectangular pattern. But for so long, when it came to that particular red and blue suit from Wave 1, the one thing that was missing were wall-crawling hands. And Hasbro listened to the fans and people like me that, wanted to see that with that figure. And they finally added those when it came to Symbiote Spider-Man. So your Symbiote Spider-Man will have a pair of wall-crawling hands, which is nice to have because you can get some other types of poses and hand positions with them. Like you could even, kind of replicate that same look from the Secret Wars comic book cover where he has the open up hands and he's in that stance. Like you could do that if you want with these hands, which is great. So I'm glad that they included these. You can definitely get a bunch of variation and stuff with the different hand poses and stuff when you're taking photos of this guy or having him on display, which I can't wait to do. Now, the true test when it comes to the Symbiote Spider-Man figure is going to be the articulation, and I say that this figure has already got it in the bag because this is the exact same body mold as the classic suit from Wave 1, so you can already know that this figure is going to be super posable and you're going to have a ton of fun with it, and I'm looking forward to seeing what all it can do when it comes to, you know, posing it on camera for photos and, you know, if I want to have it on display and stuff like that. Now, for starters, the head area does have this neck gap right here, like a notch in the neck. So you will be able to get some good head tilt. You can tilt it back as far as that, and you can also tilt it in as far as that. And due to that dumbbell joint in the figure, you are able to get some good rotation with it. So you can have him tilted like that, or if you want to have his head tilted like that, like you can just get all sorts of crazy motions and angles with this guy when it comes to that neck and head joint, which I love. Moving down towards the torso areas where we can see the butterfly joints once again for this guy, and like I said, I love butterfly joints because they just add that extra range of motion for figures, and it just matches so well with the type of character that Spider-Man is and how he moves and his style of fighting and motion and stuff like that. So you can angle them in as far as that, or you can angle them back as far as that, and you can get some good range of motion with this guy. And also, once you have the joint that's also for the shoulder attached to the butterfly joint, you can just, you know, if you want, you can kind of angle them upward as much as that. So if you want to have him in leaping poses where he's like kind of perched or something like that, like it'll work well. You also have some bicep swivel as well, and then you can bend the elbows as far in as that and extend them like that due to the double jointed elbows. Same thing for the other arm. There's also some swivel in the wrist, and you can also angle them down and then upward like that, and that's for all of the hands that come with this guy. There's also a diaphragm cut, which allows for some extra tilt, whether it be back or forward as well. And you can also get some tilt side to side, which is nice. And then you also have the extra joint right here that is in the waist, which will allow you to angle him back as far as that. So once you combine that with the diaphragm cut, he's going to be able to do some crazy leaning back positions and also leaning forward positions, especially if you want to have him in a web swinging pose, which will definitely come in handy. As for the joints on the legs, this is where things get even more crazy because you can get some pretty high kicking poses on this guy, which is fun. Like, because, you know, Spider-Man is definitely going to be kicking people and all sorts of stuff, especially when he's swinging and stuff throughout New York City. So this will definitely be good for that. And I love how flexible the joints are when it comes to the thigh area. You can also have some swivel there because of the swivel and joint in the thigh right there. There's also the double jointed knees, so you can kneel them in as far as that, like if you want to have him kneeing someone or kneeing while he's swinging or, you know, kneeling or something like that, like it'll work for that. And that's the same thing on this leg as well. And then when you move down, you also have some swivel in the calf area, so you can rotate that all the way around. And there's also the ankle rockers as well, which is a lot of fun. Now, the one thing that I do kind of have to complain about with this figure, and I'm sure this is just a, you know, one of those things that happens when it comes to figures and producing them in mass quantities, is that for some reason, my figure had to end up being the one that has this like weird, like gashing or whatever that's in the joint. Like if you look at the back of the leg on the right leg, that looks normal. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you look at this one, it looks like something was like tearing into it or something. Like, I don't know what happened. And I think I'm going to try to see if I can trim it down with my crafting knife off camera and stuff, and hopefully get that fixed. And I'll let you guys know over on Instagram how that turns out. But it's basically just one of the things that kind of takes away from the look. And I think at some point too, when I was like messing with the joints and stuff, it may have been cutting into the leg and kind of splitting it apart in that calf area. So that is somewhat of a disappointment, but it's, you know, still able to move. It's just one of those things that's just like, I don't understand why that had to happen with this one. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's still a fun figure to mess around with. And like I said, you can get all sorts of crazy poses. And one of the other things I did notice too is that due to the wall crawling hands being a thing for this guy, you can also have him do like handstands and stuff, and you can balance him pretty well due to having the wall crawling hands, which is something that I think, you know, would have been fun to do with the classic suit from Wave 1. So I'm glad that that is now a feature for this guy, and I can't wait to test it out on the other figures that they'll make when it comes to Spider-Man, especially when you have the same hands for Ben Reilly, who was also a part of this Wave 2. Now, when it comes to Marvel Legends figures, a lot of them are in the 6-inch scale. This is the case for the Symbiote Spider-Man and a lot of the figures I've been picking up recently to review on the channel. But something I do want to test out in this video and in future videos potentially is to check them out when it comes to their size comparison next to other Legends figures in my collection. So for starters, I do want to whip out the classic suit Spider-Man because this is the guy I've been talking about a lot in comparison to Symbiote Spider-Man. And as we can see, they're both the same height, obviously, because it's the same body mold, so same body build and everything like that, same stature, especially when you see it from the side profile, that is how that looks, and same thing from the back. So there isn't much difference there, except for the fact that he actually has wall-crawling hands. I'm glad that they did this, man. It's just really good to see these hands on this figure. Setting Spider-Man to the side, though, we do have the retro card Venom from Hasbro PostCon last year, and I think that this is a fitting character to have here because obviously this is the same symbiote that, you know, made Venom using Eddie Brock, so very fitting here to have him. And basically this is going to be a huge difference in height because Venom, when he's with Eddie Brock, has a much more buff stature and body build and everything like that, so you can see the height difference there when you look at it front facing, when you see it from the side profile, and also when you look at it from behind. So those look pretty good side by side. I'm excited to kind of see how they look when I have them displayed together along with Spider-Man and the other characters. The retro card Gwen Stacy from Wave 1 as well, and we can see that there is a very obvious height difference here. There is going to be that because she is not as tall as Spider-Man, but it looks cool. They look nice together, and you can also see the same height difference when you look at it from the side profile, and same when you flip them around. And then lastly, I do want to take a look at the 80th anniversary Punisher figure that I picked up a while back and see how they match up in height. And when we look at these two, you can see that they're somewhat on par. Punisher is slightly taller from what I can tell. He definitely does have a slight bit of height difference on Spider-Man, but it's not that big of a difference. They kind of can match up toe-to-toe with each other. So overall, I had a blast with the Symbiote Spider-Man figure from the retro vintage Spider-Man collection. I think that this guy is a lot of fun to mess around with, especially when you're posing him, because he has so much articulation. He's super posable, just like his predecessor with the classic suit Spider-Man from Wave 1. Like, it's just so much fun to have this figure in the collection. And I'm just glad that Hasbro and Marvel Legends wanted to make this guy, you know, happen for this retro vintage collection. It's just fitting to have him here, and I think he'll definitely match up and fit in well with the other figures that I have for the retro Spider-Man collection, even the ones that I have not unboxed yet, which those will get their reviews in due time. In regards to any of the other figures here in Wave 2 that are, you know, existing, which would be the Shocker, Ben Reilly, Hammerhead, Hobgoblin, and then Spider-Man Mark 1 or Armored Spider-Man, those will be getting reviews at some point. I actually do have the Shocker on hand, so that'll be reviewed next Friday, and then we'll probably get back to some of the other figures, either that or take a look at the two Fantastic Four figures that I have from their own retro vintage collection. Actually, no, I also have Dr. Doom, so that might get reviewed first, or so we'll see what happens with those, but those will definitely be having reviews soon on the channel. And yeah, now, if you guys have not already subscribed to the channel, be sure to go ahead and do so that you don't miss out on any of the upcoming reviews here on the channel. And also be sure to follow over on Instagram, where I will be sharing the photos for this figure and many other figures to come. And you can also see the other past photos that I've done for the other figures that have been reviewed here on the channel. With that being said, I hope you all have an amazing day, and I'll catch you all later. Peace out.